We're recording in 3, 2, and 1.
We are going to geek out over the science fiction writer that I've been reading for years. I love this guy. I don't know why more people aren't reading him.
All right, welcome to episode 143 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 143. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows and the ups and downs, the good and the bad and the nerd and the murd. We just finished Punisher season 1 last night. That's really good.
Yeah, it
But
is.
damn, he gets fucked up in that.
Yeah, he does.
Bad.
Yeah.
Bad.
Yes.
But it was very good. So because we're watching the Defender series in order, so now we're started over to Jessica Jones season 2, which we started a little bit last night. Also read. I don't know how true this is, but it looks like it is. The the DCEU, which is being rebooted by James Gunn and is going to start with the new Superman movie. I was looking at the cast of that, and I don't recognize anybody who's in that except for one, to me, major star. Guy Gardner's going to be in it.
Yes.
Green Lantern. It's going to be
Nathan
Nathan
Nathan,
Fillion.
Nathan Fillion is Guy
Yes,
Gardner. Okay, I
yes.
can see that.
According to what I'm seeing so far, I guess I looked that up on IMDb, see if that's the case.
Guy Gardner. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I like Superman movies, so I mean, we'll see how this goes. I think they're calling it Superman Legacy. Yeah, Superman Legacy. Um, and yeah, and it shows Nathan Fillion in the list, but I don't recognize anybody else that's in this. I'll have to look if I've seen any of these people in anything else, but it doesn't.
Right on.
No names are standing out, so it's going to be kind of interesting. Oh, Wendell Pierce, I know him.
Wendell Pierce. What was he in?
Did you ever see The Wire?
Yes.
He was one of the detectives in The Wire. He was also in Suits.
Oh, I know Wendell Pierce.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's playing Perry White. Sean Gunn's in it. Do you
Oh,
recognize
good
him?
good casting. Wendell Pierce is Perry White. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like that. I like that a lot.
yeah, that'll be really good. So those are the only names I really recognize in it. So interesting. We'll see how that goes. It's what's the release date? Bum, 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 20 July 11th, 2025.
Hmm.
So we'll see. Since he's completely rebooting and everything, so
Yep.
see how that goes. Anyway, um, that's all I got. Do you want to step over on the nerdy side of the house I know nothing
Yeah.
about?
well, okay. Well, first I want to say, hey, we did go out to the a few weeks back. We did go out to the cicada adopt a dog thing. Basically propping nerdy and murdery because a local business person, uh, Prickly Pineapple Creations, gives a discount on pens and things for being a listener to Nerdery Murdery. So we kind of went out to that. A good
Cool,
time. I ended up
cool.
posting out a TikTok for that. It was like a little arts fair, and they were adopting dogs, and it was a lot of fun. So you
That's cool.
should definitely check that out.
Awesome. Yeah, that's I've seen that on our Facebook.
Yep. Yep, there's a lot of, and then they really do tout nerdery and murdery too, so it's nice. Sherry Kaufman, the person Sherry Kaufman Armitage, who was one of the fan curated music playlists,
Awesome.
is the one who
Shout out
runs.
to her.
Yep, and yeah, she was repping us good. Matter of fact, I walked up and we bought some stuff. Great jam, by the way. And she's like, "Well, you know what? You get the pin because you support nerdery murdery." I'm like, "Yes, as a matter of fact, I do." But yeah,
Awesome.
so today we're going to talk about science fiction writer Jack McDevitt. Was really kind of big into this guy back in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s.
Hmm.
But it's one of those things, I don't read as much once I had kids because I would be reading a book. They'd be like, "What are you reading? Would you read it to me?" And it's like, you're not going to like, no, you're not. Why don't you go get one of your books? You're not going to like this at all. Um, but this guy is he's an American science fiction author whose novels frequently deal with attempts to make contact with alien races with archaeology and xenoarchaeology. Most of his books follow either superluminal pilot Priscilla Hutchins or Galactic Relic hunters Alex Benedict and Chase Colpath. McDevitt has received numerous nominations for Hugo, Nebula, and John W. Campbell Awards. Seeker won the 2006 Nebula Award for Best Novels. Today, I want to talk about 3 science fiction books that he did in particular: Engines of God, Eternity Road, and Distant Shores. Or I'm sorry, Ancient Shores. I always want to call it Distant Shores. So McDevitt received a master's degree in literature from Wesleyan in 1971. He returned to writing when his wife, Maureen, encouraged him to try his hand at it in 1980. And as of 2007, McDevitt lives near Brunswick, Georgia. And in 2005, he donated his archives to the Department of Rare Books and Special Collections at Northern Illinois University. The novel Seeker, again, won the 2006 Nebula Award for Best Novel, given by the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America. He has been nominated for Nebula Awards 16 times. Seeker is his only win. Have you read any of this stuff?
No, I was looking through his book list. I've never read any of his.
So one is basically in a series, The Engines of God, loosely a series. The other 2, Eternity Road, is not in a series, and Ancient Source is in a series, but it's its own series. But these 3 books, I picked up Engines of God mostly for the cover because I thought it was beautiful, which I have included in our notes. You can see the cover of the paperback of the Engines of God. But McDevitt introduced the idea of a universe that was once teeming with intelligent life, but contains only their abandoned artifacts by the time humans arrive on the scene. The main character of Engines of God, pilot Priscilla Hutchins, has since appeared in 7 more books: Deep Six, Kindi, Omega, Odyssey, Cauldron, Starhawk, and The Long Sunset. The mystery surrounding the destructive Omega clouds, which are introduced in the Engines of God, is left unexplored until Omega. McDevitt's novel frequently raises questions which he does not attempt to answer. He prefers to leave ambiguities to puzzle and intrigue his readers. Some things are best left to the reader's very able imagination. The sci-fi site Stephen H. Silver has written about this. McDevitt, with a probably unintentional tendency to give the impression that his novels will go in one direction and then take them in a different direction, or possibly his background is so well thought out that throwaway lines or subplots or minor characters have enough information behind them to make the reader want to see their story as much as the main plot of the book. While slightly annoying, I've decided to strengthen McDevitt's writing. It shows the depth of his creative world. So with Engines of God, humans confirm the existence of intelligent extraterrestrial life beyond Earth when they discover a statue of a bipedal alien on Iapetus, a moon of Saturn. After developing faster than light travel, humans quickly discover other mysterious monuments in nearby solar systems. However, details about the monument makers themselves remained elusive. Even after decades of exploring, humans have found disappointingly few habitable worlds and even fewer signs of intelligent alien life. At the time, only 3 examples have been identified. The planet Pinnacle, which had evidently been home to an intelligent society that became extinct nearly 1 million years earlier and had left very little trace of themselves or their now non-inhabitable planet. The planet Quadraca, which has many similarities to Earth and has been home to an intelligent species, the Quadracans, until they became extinct just a few centuries prior. And Inakidemini, or Nock, is a moon of a ringed gas giant and home to the only known non-human intelligent species still alive, the Nox, and has developed technology roughly equivalent to Earth's early 20th century. And at the time of discovery, they were engaged in a global conflict roughly analogous to World War I. So yeah, there is basically a duck blind on Nock where they are studying the Nock species and watching them as they develop. what they have discovered is that every society basically goes through a period where they use what is anal, what is essentially fossil fuels. We'll just say that they use the fossil fuels until they run out, and then they either go on to become a spacefaring civilization or they descend into chaos, which is what happened to the Nok. The Nok were actually a little more technologically advanced a few centuries earlier, but they basically ran out of fossil fuels, and now they're having World War One. Only they don't have any engines, so it's like World War One with 19th or 18th century technology. They are still using steam, but they're powering it with wood, not coal. The lack of other habitable worlds possesses a significant problem because Earth is becoming increasingly inhospitable to humans and other species. And by 2202, global climate change has led to a significant rise in sea levels and many other weather-related changes. Food shortages and famine were rampant throughout the world. Many people were now convinced that humans could only avoid going extinct if they could establish an off-world colony. Now, in the novel, they finally discover, of course, this fact about the fossil fuel crisis that every intelligent species encounters and what happens to them after. They eventually find out what happened to the sort of the monument makers and the people on Pinnacle, which are two different species. But it's more about studying and trying to figure it out. Now they go on about this. He does other books in this series. I have not read a lot of these other books. I did read Deep Six, but Deep Six kind of lost me. And then Kindy, where they basically stumble across an Ark ship, which is basically a floating museum that is hurtling through interstellar space or hyperspace. It's good, but it kind of ends on a cliffhanger, and I didn't finish it because I was reading another book of his instead. The next book we're going to talk about, which is Eternity Road. But this one is really interesting. Engines of God. It has more questions than answers, but it's fascinating because they really go down into, the idea of how societies work, how intelligent civilizations work that aren't us. And he sort of proposes certain ideas that really aren't thought of a lot, and that's what I like about his stuff. You're not familiar with Engines of God at all.
No, I'm not familiar with this author.
Okay, and he takes a scholarly approach, much like Asimov did. So if you're into Asimov, I think you would really dig the crap out of this stuff. I'm surprised we've never talked about this before. But yeah, Engines of God's just one of those. I've read it and I was like, oh my God, this guy's freaking brilliant. I wonder what else he's got. And of course I read some of the other things. I think I kind of ended. Deep Six was kind of one that I just kind of left because it was more of an adventure story. And I was more interested in the ideas of rediscovery, which is in a lot of his work. The next book I want to talk about is Eternity Road. It was released in 1998 by Eros Books. Basically, it takes place 1,700 years after a deadly plague has wiped out the great civilization of man. The survivors' descendants have built up a new, comparably primitive society. A group of explorers sets out on an expedition to find a legendary haven of knowledge and ancient wisdom, and in the process learn more about the people they only remember as the road makers. It's really interesting because they start talking about, because these are all, the heroes of this story are all academics, right? They're all what we would consider archaeologists and linguists and things of that nature. And they start talking about these problems of, we don't know how they got the Hajis to work on the ancient roads. The roads don't actually exist per se. They only know they're there because trees don't grow there. They're strips of basically just grassland that run straight. And they started excavating them and discovered basically concrete underneath them. The society is analogous to early 19th century, like 1800. They have horses and buggies and things of that nature, but they also have some other medicine and things of that nature that those people didn't have. So in some cases they're way more advanced than we are, but in some cases they're way less advanced. And they're always talking about hajis and how they were conveyed down the road, and they're not sure how many of them there were. Hajis are cars that were discovered by this scientist named Haji, and that's what they named them. So there's a lot of things like that. Like 95% of the population was killed by this plague, which was again 1700 years prior to the time of the book. It is said that they built devastating ruins of enormous cities and magnificent roads that still cover the landscape. But in the valley of the Mississippi River, a number of towns have united again. Trade and science have begun anew. But they're also kind of at odds with some of the other civilizations they've come in contact with. A copy of Mark Twain's novel, A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, is discovered in the estate of a sole survivor of an earlier expedition to the north. A young woman named Shaka Milan, whose brother died in the previous expedition almost a decade ago, decides to gather a band of explorers and scientists and try to find Haven, a legendary stronghold where the knowledge of mankind is said to have been collected and kept safe for future generations. A very long voyage ensues along the Mississippi River using various modes of transport, such as horse, boats, and even some air transports that they discover. It takes the group on a long journey to the ruins of the ancient city of Chicago, meeting civilizations such as the Illyrian scholars, tribal Tucks, and raiders to the remnants of the old world and their AI and machines which continue to follow their programming. After losing several members of their team, such as Silas falling over a walkway, John to a gas leak explosion at a villa to pirates, and traveling by an extraordinary means of transport, which is basically a maglev train. The still functioning after hundreds of years, the team eventually finds Haven. In their excitement at having finally reached their destination, Chaka and her group open the door that has sealed away the knowledge of the old world. Spared by the destruction of the plague by the October Patrol, which is what these people called themselves, only to realize that they had made a mistake similar to the first expedition, and by opening the doors in the underground facility, they caused flooding to start occurring. Because what the October Road group did was they sent out submarines, very small submarines, to go around and collect books and works of art and things to lock away in this facility. Well, the only way to get into the facility, because there's a plague going on and they want it to be airtight, is through this underground tunnel. Problem is, when you open it up, it starts to flood the complex because some of the pressure doors don't work right because it's been sitting there for 1700 years. They are able to save some of the knowledge, and they're starting to understand that the things that they called Hajis were called something else and things like that at the very end of the book. But it's brilliant. It's this idea of they're rediscovering our world, and some of the things that they view as our world is not how it happened at all. They think the Mark Twain book is a travel log. They think it actually happened, that a Connecticut Yankee ended up in King Arthur's court. And they eventually soon realize, when they get there, that it's a story, not a travel log. But it's brilliant. I really loved this book. And it's fascinating to see how they sort of come into their being on it. Again, Jack McDevitt, he's a fascinating writer, but he does leave questions. And he doesn't go back to that story, which I'd kind of like to see, what happened to those people 100 years later on. But I mean, you could hear harkens to Foundation and things like that, which is what he was basically trying to do. The next book is called Ancient Shores. Now, Ancient Shores actually has a couple of different books in the series. I've only read the first one. Ancient Shores is a science fiction novel by American writer Jack McDevitt. It was published in '96, and it was nominated for a Nebula Award for Best Novel in 1997. A continuation of this novel by the same writer was published in 2015 entitled Thunderbird. Basically, a vast lake known as Lake Agassiz covered much of North Dakota, Manitoba, and Minnesota right after the end of the last ice age. The story begins with farmer Tom Lasker and his son Will uncover a seemingly brand new boat found on a landlocked farm. It draws tourists to the area. Max Collinswood, a friend of Tom's, tries to help discover the origins of the boat. Collinswood enlists April Cannon, a worker at a chemical lab, who discovers that the yacht is made from an unknown material. In fact, it is a fiberglass-like material with an impossible atomic number of 161. Collinwood and Cannon discover something else on a nearby ridge, which is part of a Sioux reservation. The Sioux assist in the excavation and examination. It turns out to be a green, glassy, roundhouse-like structure made from the same material. Eventually, they gain access to it, revealing a dock for the sailboat, but no entrance for it. They discover that the structure contains the means to access other sites not on Earth, sets off a struggle between the government and the reservation that controls it. So yeah, they even bring in the Confederate Air Force, or the Colonel's Air Force, to kind of help the reservation maintain control so they can discover it. But essentially, it is an alien outpost that they put on the planet 10,000 years ago. And even though the material has an atomic number of 161, which should be highly radioactive, it is in fact inert and nearly indestructible and lightweight because it's a boat. And they just dig it up in the middle of this farm. They start by basically finding the light on top of the mast of the boat when they're plowing a field, and just keep digging and digging and digging. And they find the boat, and then they find the glass structure, and they realize the boat set on the shores of this lake 10,000 years ago when the lake was there. Oh, the lake's been gone a long time. So it's really interesting. He really paints a really interesting picture, and they start going through what is essentially a transporter. This glass roundhouse, it goes to 6 different places. One of them is what was the dock and base on Earth, and 5 other planets. It's fascinating. It's interesting. They discover other what appear to be human beings, but the human beings don't want to have anything to do with them. They run away every time they see them, and they're advanced human beings. So they're thinking that maybe some of the people in North America got recruited by these aliens, but they don't really address it. It's more about the discovery and how the U.S. government tries to clamp it down, because if there's aliens, they want to be in control of it. It's really kind of a fascinating story, and he paints a beautiful picture on some of these other planets, and how this dock kind of set, and you can really see it in your mind what it looked like 10,000 years ago, because it's a ridge, but it's a ridge now, but back then it was the shore of a lake. It was an ancient shore, which is where they get the title from the book. I love this one as well. Again, he's pretty prolific, but he's not real well known. Jack McDevitt is one of those guys that just, I think more people should get out and check out. Everybody knows Asimov, everybody knows Orson Scott Card, but he's one of those ones that, he should be up there with Larry Niven and them. And he's getting there, but he's probably got a little ways to go. But again, I like him because there's more questions than answers, and it's pretty scientific. But unlike Asimov, for me, his characterization is a little more interesting. His characters are a little more fleshed out. The backstories are more interesting. Um, like Stephen King. That's what's great about Stephen King. It's all about the inner turmoil going on with the characters more than anything else. I mean, regardless of what the story is the characters are interesting. Jack McDevitt has very interesting characters, um, doing these fantastical things, and at the end, it's like, oh, hey, they're going to discover this new thing, and it's going to revolutionize the world. No, not really. They're going to discover this new thing, but you know, it's going to be a while before we figure it out. And that basically that's what a lot of his work is. But that's basically it for Jack McDevitt. Other than get out and read this dude. His stuff isn't half price. Sometimes it's hard to come by. Definitely read Engines of God. Definitely um, Distant Shores. Not Distant Shores. Damn it. Ancient Shores and Eternity Road. Especially Eternity Road. That's such a great story. Um, and just this dogged young lady who is this brilliant scientist. Um, and also like the Hutch, the faster than light pilot, she's just great. She's like a Sam Spade character almost. So yeah, get out and read
Well,
him. It's
and I've mentioned this before. It's been many episodes, but as you talked about his books, it made me think of Michael Anderle, and I think those are some books that you really ought to check out.
Michael Anderle. Okay,
Yeah, the Cathurian Gambit.
okay.
I've mentioned it before, and it's basically um, eh, vampirism and werewolfism, if those are words,
Uh huh.
are actually from alien technology.
Oh,
And it's mankind's journey out into space because of this, and they're very good. I think the initial run of the series is 20 or 21 books
holy crap!
for the Catherian Gambit. Yeah, Michael Anderle's really good. He invites people to write in his world.
Oh, nice.
If you do, he asks for writing credit on it, and you can't use an already established character.
Okay,
So you have to make up your own, but he does invite people to write in that world. And Michael Anderle, really good. Check out the Cathurian Gambit. I've read all of those. They're really good. And there's more that tacks onto it because of other writers that have gone on board and stuff. So awesome. Good stuff.
thanks. Thank you, sir.
All right, with that, we'll step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off the Doe Network, Entertainment Daily, Medium, and Wikipedia, and this is the murder of Susannah Jane Lamplugh.
I'm sorry.
Susannah Jane Lamplugh.
Susannah Jane Lamplugh.
And so this, along with one we're covering next week, is about real estate agents that were murdered, and I found them both interesting. The one next week I was way more familiar with because I've heard the story before. It's actually much more famous, but this one was very interesting too. Um, so forgive me that we're going to do back-to-back weeks about a real estate murder, but I thought they were both very interesting.
Yeah, it seems like real estate uh, people crop up a lot in murders. Both
Sometimes,
as, yeah, both as the victims and as the perpetrators.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Something about real estate. I don't know.
So Susannah Jane Lamplugh, who was also known as Susie, was born on May 3rd, 1961 in Gloucestershire, United Kingdom.
Okay,
Gloucestershire, is that right?
Gloucester, Gloucestershire,
Gloucester? Gloucestershire, okay.
Gloucestershire.
In 1986, the 25-year-old woman was working as an estate agent at an agency called Sturgis, located at 654 Fulham Road in London. July 28th of 86 was a sunny day in London, and Susie had an appointment scheduled in her diary for a viewing at 37 Shorolds Road in Fulham. The man who had named himself Mr. Kipper had said that he would meet Susie at the property at 12:45 p.m. and her office diary had these recorded details. She left her office that afternoon and set out for the address. And between 12:45 and 1 p.m., a total of 3 witnesses had seen Susie outside of the house in the gateway of the property, appearing to wait for the arrival of the prospective tenant. 10 minutes later, the owner of the house next door heard someone close the front door of number 37 and saw Susie in the company of a man. They were leaving the house and looking back up at it, and this sighting was later the basis for an artist's impression of the unidentified male. The sighting of the pair standing outside the house was corroborated by another man who was walking past the property at around the same time. This witness noticed that the man had been holding a bottle of champagne with ribbons around it. The pair were then sighted entering a car, but the neighbor believes that the pair had been engaged in an argument before entering the vehicle. The man was described as being a white male between 25 and 30 with a dark complexion and dark hair swept back. He was immaculately dressed in a dark charcoal suit and was described as, quote, public schoolboy type, so that kind of look. There was then a sighting of Susie driving her car erratically away from Shorolds Road, arguing with the man in the car, causing the witness to swerve to avoid a collision. Susie's close friend Barbara Whitfield saw her driving north up the Fulham Palace Road in her white Ford Fiesta with a man around 2:45 p.m. She waved to Susie as she cycled down south down the road, but she was talking to her passenger and didn't see her. By 3:30 p.m., Susie's colleagues at the estate agency were becoming concerned that she had not returned. And at 4:30 p.m., they traveled to 37 Shorolds Road to see if she was there, but she was not. And at 5:30 p.m., they called the police to report her missing. At 10 o'clock p.m., a police officer found Susie's car parked in the same spot at which it had been sighted that afternoon, which was by another house for sale. The vehicle appeared to have been parked in haste, overlapping access to a garage, and this was about 1 mile away from 37 Shorolds Road. The driver's door was open, the handbrake was not enabled, and the car key was missing. Susie's purse was found in the car, but neither her own keys nor the keys to 37 Shorolds Road were found. The driver's seat itself was pushed back into a position from which Susie could not have been able to drive the car, indicating that someone else had been driving the car. Police suggested that a black left-hand drive BMW vehicle may have been involved, following an eyewitness account of a car with that description seen parked in Shorolds Road.
That's unusual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, left-hand drive. Yeah.
Yep.
It's like right-hand drive over here.
The man remembered seeing it because many cars in the road had been double parked, causing him some difficulty driving through the road. Another witness corroborated this account and said that she had seen the dark-colored BMW parked almost outside of 37 Shorolds Road. Witnesses had also said that they had seen 2 white Ford Fiestas parked in Shorolds Road that day. When news of Susie's disappearance hit the news, a witness came forward with a significant sighting. The witness had been jogging when he saw a car speeding south down Stevenage Road, which was the same road in which Susie's car was later found abandoned. The car, which he noticed was a dark left-handed drive BMW, suddenly stopped further down the road, and a woman who matched Susie's appearance had been struggling with a man inside the car and sounding the horn in an apparent attempt to attract attention. The witness stated, quote, I came out of the park to be met by a BMW which tore across the road and came to a halt with somebody with their hand on the hooter, pressing it for a very long time. As I stood there, I saw a blonde young lady. She looked as though she was laughing, or she could have been screaming. What worried me was how could she drive with what was going on, but it never occurred to me that it was a left-hand drive car. Susie's boyfriend, a 27-year-old stockbroker, and her male flatmate were both questioned by police, but both had solid alibis with corroborating witnesses. Susie's two-bedroom flat in Putney was searched, but nothing notable or suspicious was found. And it was soon suggested in the press that if Mr. Kipper's name was Dan, the combined name would be an anagram of kidnapper. Susie's office manager revealed that a bunch of red roses had been delivered to the office by a mysterious man just days before she disappeared. Police released photos of Susie with dark brown hair, but she had tinted her hair blonde on the Friday before she vanished. The initial investigation was conducted without computers, using an old-fashioned card index system in which all leads are filed on approximately 26,000 cards. Because Susie was only considered a missing person, known criminals in the area were not considered as suspects. 6 months after Susie's disappearance, a man informed police that he had discovered a BMW that had been left abandoned in a road for some months was registered to a Belgian man known sometimes as Mr. Kipper, and detectives believed this information was significant. However, the car's owner was located in Belgium and had a confirmed alibi for the day of Susie's disappearance, and his BMW had been in a garage in Belgium on that day, so he was quickly eliminated as a suspect. Sadly, no further leads came into the police, and Susie's case soon grew cold. 1 year after Susie's disappearance, detectives noticed that the artist's impression of Mr. Kipper strongly resembled John Cannon, who was a convicted rapist and later abductor and murderer who had been residing in a nearby prison hostel outside of HM Prison Wormwood Scrubs around the time of Susie's disappearance.
Prison hostel. Is that like a halfway house?
I think so.
Okay.
Over in the UK, that must be what they call them.
Yep. They have weird words for things.
In 1980, he had raped and beaten his girlfriend when she tried to leave him, and he had raped a shopkeeper at knife point in 1981. Cannon had been on day release from the prison in the months preceding Susie's disappearance and held a job in the area as a porter. He was public school educated and was known for his ability to attract women. In the weeks before Susie disappeared, Cannon had told inmates and workmates that he was frequenting wine bars in Fulham and had met a new uptown girlfriend named Suzu. Susie had visited some of those wine bars, including one located opposite from her office. Cannon had also frequented a pub in Putney that Susie visited on July 25th, 86, which was the same day that Cannon was released from prison, 3 days before Susie's disappearance.
Huh.
Cannon did confirm in 2021 that he had visited the bars and pubs. He often delivered roses to women as a romantic ploy and had told people he was interested in buying a property in the area. In June of 87, Susie's mother, Diane, said she believed her daughter was dead. And in October of 87, 15 months after Susie's disappearance, John Cannon abducted and murdered 29-year-old Shirley Banks from Bristol. He attempted to rape two women in a shop 3 weeks later after driving to the shop in his black BMW. He had also tried to abduct a woman the night before he had abducted Shirley and had been visiting wine bars in Bristol to search for victims. He had held Shirley hostage in his flat for 18 hours before killing her and dumping her at a site in the Quantock Hills known as Dead Woman's Ditch. Soon after John Cannon was arrested, Shirley's minicar was found hidden in his garage with a new false number plate affixed reading SLP 386S.
Huh.
Inside John's dark BMW was found an imitation handgun, handcuffs, and the tax disc for Shirley's car. Detectives later noted that the SLP could stand for Susie Lamplugh and the number 86 for 1986, the year in which she vanished. The media began to note the likeness between John Cannon and the facial composite in Susie's case and speculated about a link between the Banks and Lamplugh cases. It was also noted that Cannon had joined a dating agency in Bristol weeks before he had murdered Banks, providing a false name of John Peterson, and had presented himself in a recorded video as a successful, smartly dressed businessman. This video is publicly available still.
Oh, yeah?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Metropolitan Police detectives traveled to Bristol to interview John about Susie's disappearance, and when he was asked by detectives if he understood the significance of the number plate, he replied that it could be seen as a reference to Susie, whom the detectives had not yet mentioned to him. However, John claimed that he had chosen the letters for the plate at random. He claimed he had bought the car from a Bristol businessman who was responsible for the murders of Shirley Banks, Susie, and another girl, and that the man was in a great deal of trouble. John Cannon was known for masquerading as a Bristol businessman. When asked if the man was himself, Cannon provided an affirmative response, but immediately recanted and ended the interview because he was overcome with emotion. John Cannon was later sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of Shirley Banks and for several other rapes, abductions, and attempted abductions. He was also convicted on the rape of a woman in Reading on the train line between London and Bristol 6 weeks after his release from Wormwood Scrubs prison.
Reading.
I'm sorry?
It's Reading. It looks like reading, but it's Reading.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well, they shouldn't spell it that way
No, they shouldn't.
because that's reading.
Yes, it is.
The sentencing judge told Cannon, quote, "You should never again be at liberty outside of prison walls."
Wow.
Further interviews were conducted with Cannon regarding Susie's disappearance in 88, 89, and 90. In 1990, a woman named Gilly Page, with whom John Cannon had been in a relationship after Susie's disappearance, informed police that John had spoken about the case and told her that Susie was buried at Norton Barracks. Investigators wanted to dig at Norton Barracks. However, the area had been significantly redeveloped over the years, and investigators were not able to dig in the area because of the houses now standing at the site.
Hmm.
Another former girlfriend of Cannon's, Daphne Sargent, also believed Cannon to be responsible, saying, quote, "As soon as I heard about Susie, I knew it was John. It had all the hallmarks, right down to the champagne." In December of 2000, police searched a brickworks near Norton Barracks that had been mentioned in several original witness statements. And a year later, another search was conducted in Somerset at a location by a river that Cannon was said to have frequented. However, no remains were found. In the years after Susie's disappearance, police had tested the DNA of 800 unidentified bodies and skeletal remains that matched her description. Susie was officially declared dead 7 years after her disappearance on July 27, 1993. In the mid 1990s, speculation arose that Michael Sams may have murdered Susie, as he had just been convicted of kidnapping an estate agent named Stephanie Slater in Birmingham. However, police found no evidence for the theory and discounted it, noting that Sam's crimes were likely influenced by the high-profile Lamplugh case. Furthermore, Sam's only had one leg, no witness sightings, and no witness sightings of the man with whom Susie had been seen with that day had reported him walking with a limp or only having one leg. A new reinvestigation was launched in the early 2000s with a new team whose detectives were directed to determine whether John Cannon could be eliminated as a suspect or implicated in Susie's murder. Investigators learned that several estate agents in Fulham had been visited at the time of Susie's disappearance by a man calling himself Mr. Kipper. Detectives believed this had been John Cannon seeking potential victims. And in the late 1970s and in 1980, during the final years of John's troubled marriage to his wife June Vale, there had been a series of mysterious rapes in homes for sale in the West Midlands where John was living. The unidentified rapist specifically targeted homes on the market for sale by estate agents, became known as the house for sale rapist. 20 women were assaulted and raped in properties in the area, and no one was ever arrested for the crimes. Police suspect that John was responsible for the crimes, which began as his marriage was falling. The rapes did stop in early 1990 when John Cannon began a new relationship with a woman named Sharon Major. Detectives would later note that John had appeared uninvited at a house that was for sale in Shorolds Road days before Susie was last seen, believing the young female occupant was alone in the house. He acted strangely until the woman's husband appeared, causing him to quickly leave. During the reinvestigation of Susie's case, a mass of circumstantial evidence was uncovered that pointed to John Cannon. It was discovered that Susie had disclosed to relatives shortly before she had disappeared that she had a new boyfriend from the Bristol area where Cannon had moved days after the disappearance and from where his family originated. Susie also told a relative shortly before she vanished that she was concerned about the man and was becoming scared of him. Despite being in prison in the borough of Hammersmith and Fulham before the disappearance, John Cannon denied ever having been to Fulham. John did not have an alibi for the days after leaving the prison and claims not to recall where he was at the time, despite having an impeccable memory of other events at the time. And John Cannon's nickname in prison was Mr. Kipper because he wore Kipper-style broad ties. After new reconstructions were shown on BBC's Crime Watch in 2000, new witnesses emerged. The witnesses included a man who said that he had seen a man resembling John Cannon looking into the window of Susie's estate agency on the day which she disappeared. Susie worked at the desk near the window, in part because the office believed that positioning an attractive woman by the window would attract customers. In December of 2000, John was arrested on suspicion of Susie's abduction and murder and interviewed at Hammersmith Police Station. During the interview, he would admit there are, quote, one or two things I haven't been caught for. Over 5 days of interviews, John Cannon did not provide interviewers with any information that could eliminate him from the inquiry and did not provide an alibi for his movements between July 25th and 28th, 1986. In September of 2001, Cannon was arrested again and questioned at a London police station, but again, he provided no information that could eliminate him from the inquiry. Unfortunately, with no concrete evidence, no confession, he had to be released. Susie's case team concluded there was significant evidence against John Cannon to apply for prosecution. The Crown Prosecution Service agreed that the police reinvestigation had been excellent and thorough, but ultimately decided after 4 months of deliberations that there was insufficient evidence to charge John with murder, despite him being the only suspect. In 2007, a criminologist revealed that police reinvestigations between 2000 and 2002 had discovered DNA evidence in a car previously owned by John Cannon that showed that Susie had been inside the vehicle. The criminologist informed police that John Cannon said that he had access to a red Ford Sierra at the time when Susie disappeared, which was a fact that police were previously unaware. Detectives attempted to find the car and discovered it in a North London scrapyard, allowing them to conduct DNA analysis upon it. These tests did indicate that both Susie and John had been in the car, but the Crown Prosecution Service felt there was insufficient evidence to prove that both had been in the vehicle at the same time, meaning charges could not be brought against Cannon. In December of 2002, one of Cannon's fellow prisoners told police that Cannon had said he had buried Susie under the patio of his mother's house in Sutton Coldfield in the West Midlands. And in late 2018, police searched the house. Not really sure why 16 years passed before this search.
Yeah.
They dismantled the garage and began removing its concrete floor while also searching the back garden. But on November 12, 2018, police announced that the search had yielded no evidence. As of 2024, John Cannon remains the prime and only suspect in the case. He protests his innocence not only of involvement in Susie's disappearance, but of nearly all other crimes of which he was convicted, including those that were proven with DNA links and fingerprint evidence. This includes the rape of the woman in Reading, got it?
Reading.
For which forensics evidence showed the chances of the perpetrator for being anyone other than John were 260 million to 1. While in prison, John told a solicitor that he might well, quote, reveal all about Susie's case when his mother died. However, in 2020, his brother revealed that his sister had already unsuccessfully begged him to reveal the location of Susie's body, and the brother insists that he will, quote, take his secrets to the grave because he doesn't have a modicum of regret, conscience, or compassion and is a power freak. Criminologist Christopher Barry D., who exchanged hundreds of letters with John while writing a book on him, has also said that John will not reveal where he deposited the body as John is a control freak. Fellow criminologist David Wilson has agreed and said that John Cannon will not confess because he's a psychopath. So Susie's body has never been found, and she is presumed murdered and was legally declared in 93, but her case still remains open. Sadly, though, she had celebrated her 25th birthday just 2 months before her disappearance.
25. 25 and on top of the world.
And that's the sad case of the murder of Susannah Jane Lamplugh.
Well, thank you for that, sir. I find it interesting that That, as we sort of discovered, there's a lot of stuff going on with real estate agents, but it makes sense.
They're in a they could be in situations where they're in a home alone
Uh huh.
with people they don't know. And
Yes.
so, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a perfect scenario for some people. Sad to say. Sad to say. So, thanks for taking that trip with me. I appreciate it. I do appreciate your stuff as well. Hopefully, people will take a read of those books. They do sound interesting.
Jack McDevitt. Oh yeah, good stuff.
That'll take us to the end of our recording week. As always, you can find more information about us on nerderymerdery.com. That's our hub for everything we talk about. It has links to our episode as well as pictures of the topics we're discussing. And it also has the link to our YouTube page, which Zig so often updates.
That's right. There is some YouTube stuff about Jack McDevitt on this particular episode, as well as interviews. So get out there and check that out. You can kind of listen to some of the stuff we're talking about.
Awesome. You can also find the link to our merchandise page on our website, where if you wish to show off your nerdery murdery fandom, please do consider purchasing something from that store. That, along with our patrons, you can find the link to our Patreon. So if you wish to become a patron and help donate to the show, there are costs that are associated with keeping us on the air, our website, our uploads, and keeping everything going. So please do consider becoming a patron if you're enjoying our show each and every week. We appreciate each and every one of you.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. And last but not least, something you can do for free. Please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find the contact that may be looking for what we're talking about. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Jeffrey with your murdering.
Cue the music.